Hey guys, what's going on? Blaine back for another Netflix review, and today I'm going to be talking about Doom of Love. Doom of Love is a Turkish romantic drama that tells the story of Ferhat, a man who is forced to close his ad agency due to a lack of business. To help him recover and feel better again, one of his friends takes him to a yoga retreat outside of the city, where he meets a singer named Lydia. It isn't long before the two hit things off, as Lydia begins to influence Ferhat and steers him toward a new path of self-realization while they travel together. During their adventure, Ferhat comes to understand what he truly wants out of his life, while also sorting out his growing feelings toward Lydia at the same time. I was ready to write this off as another average but somewhat enjoyable Turkish drama, but I found myself increasingly disinterested with its meandering plot the longer it went on, and its obvious subtext and the way it ended left a sour taste in my mouth. Ferhat starts off as a fairly boring protagonist, which makes it hard to become invested in him at first, and he doesn't improve much from there. He's stuck in a rut with his life routine and unsure of how to get out of it, which was enough in the beginning to make me interested in seeing how he would figure things out. His transformation takes a long time to happen, but he does come to an epiphany of sorts, though it isn't exactly original. He wants to live life on his terms and avoid the lifestyle he previously lived, which is a noble idea, but he never follows up with any sort of mission in mind, so any attachment to his character remains loose at best. His counterpart Lydia was much more interesting by comparison. Her free spirit persona adds much needed energy to the story where Ferhat fails to deliver it, most of which comes in the form of her musical performances that provide a nice break from the heavier moments of the story. Beyond her musical talents, Lydia is a compelling character in her own right. Her carefree attitude hides a deep sadness which draws parallels to the dissatisfaction that Ferhat experiences in his own life, though her pain is much more deep-rooted and she has no support system to fall back on, which made it easier to sympathize with her over Ferhat. The romance between her and Ferhat is ultimately the best part about the movie, even if a lot of the legwork is done on Lydia's part. Though their relationship is formulaic, it is still sweet in parts and feels believable in the way it develops. The two connect through the common thread of self-realization, in that they want to break free from societal expectations. The movie takes its time building trust between the two, resulting in a slow burn tension where they get to know each other, and the way the sparks slowly but surely start to show between them was satisfying to see. Unfortunately, the same can't be said for the rest of the story. Once Ferhat finishes his yoga retreat, turns down a job, and takes off with Lydia and her friend Yusuf, most of the movie is spent with the three traveling from one place to another without any sort of direction plan, and so the story becomes tiring and monotonous. The general aimlessness of the plot does make sense to an extent. The group are doing what they want to do and aren't worrying about having to achieve goals, but Ferhat has already achieved his goal of being free a third of the way into the movie, so there's little substance to be found in the rest of the story. It's annoying to see these characters just float around and not do anything worthwhile. Some of the excursions they take part in are mildly interesting, feature great cinematography, and have some philosophical discussion behind them that would be meaningful, but it quickly becomes overbearing with how often the central theme is used. The movie really lays it thick on the viewer with its message regarding detachment from the material world. While I'm not averse to this idea, the complete lack of subtlety with how characters repeat their mantras to each other added further to the already boring, predictable nature of the story. Even before their travels take place, the movie is very slow in its pacing. A good chunk of time is wasted on Ferhat applying for and getting a job he doesn't want, when it would have been easier for him to just reach out to Lydia after the retreat and kickstart things from there. Now, I know that it's supposed to reflect Ferhat taking time to build enough courage to make the change he needs, but he still didn't inspire confidence. It was frustrating to deal with a character who cared so little about what he did at that point in the story, which in turn made me not care about how it all turned out for him. Adding to his lack of a compelling narrative outside of the romance was the occasional use of slow-mo editing, which is present in just about every Turkish drama on Netflix. Maybe this is a cultural thing that I simply don't get, but I always groan whenever I see movies turn into a slideshow. To me, it's a cheap way of emphasizing the drama of a scene instead of just relying on good writing. That's not to say that the movie is completely bogged down by drama though. A good chunk of comedy is present as well, mostly in the form of Ferhat's friend Serhat and his constant use of his phones, or how he explains Bitcoin to Ferhat. It doesn't add much to the plot, but any amount of substance is better than the complete lack of it which follows later on. I will say that there was something I found hilarious later in the story. The group occasionally interact with the organizer of the retreats and often meet her dog named Innocent. Every single time Lydia tries to call the dog, it just runs off and stays away from her. This was probably unintentional, but I couldn't help but laugh every time it happened. Before this movie ended, I didn't have strong feelings for it either way, although it was starting to win me over with its crafty final act. It becomes surprisingly engaging with how quickly events turn around for the characters involved, even if the way it all proceeds is a tad predictable. What had me hooked at first was how clever it was at sweeping the rug under my feet, so to speak. The movie clearly foreshadows at the beginning that something bad will happen, lulls the viewer into a false sense of security afterwards, and then at the peak of the character's happiness, it hits with an emotional gut punch to remind the audience of what they forgot was clearly hinted at. If the movie had ended there with a bit of falling action afterwards, it would have been a great ending to highlight the fragility of life and the importance of living in the moment. But instead, a plot twist in the last 5 minutes completely turns the movie on its head and ruins what it could have easily achieved. There are two huge problems with this ending, the first of which is that it makes no sense. Apart from some half-assed spiritual mumbo-jumbo, there's no logical conclusion that can be reached to understand how characters ended up where they did. And, as I've said in the past, throwing something significant like that into the last 5 minutes leaves no time to process what the heck happened. The second problem is that it's so pretentious with how it tries to explain everything away. A voiceover narration talks about how it's not really an ending because endings are supposedly associated with negativity, and that people put too much emphasis on the destination as opposed to the journey. Give me a break. Endings don't always have to go out on a purely negative note. They can be positive, or they can be bittersweet with varying shades of either side. The movie clearly tries to deliver a happy ending, but its lack of logical setup leaves it a tonally confusing mess. Furthermore, emphasizing the journey more than the destination doesn't give the filmmakers a free pass to avoid delivering a proper conclusion themselves. Movies have to end at some point, so it's important to have the story end on a satisfying note, and this movie's ending is anything but satisfying. Overall, Doom of Love is a bad melodrama that starts off more or less on the right foot and falls flat on its face soon after. If you like Turkish dramas and you can forgive this one's meandering nature and absurd ending, you might enjoy it to some extent, but for me this was an easy pass. If it hadn't been for how the romance developed between the lead characters, it would have been a total flop. It feels less like a movie and more like a series of the director's vacation videos stitched together without any rhyme or reason. Of all the Turkish dramas I've seen, this is the most disappointing one to date. What did you think about this movie? Did you enjoy the romance as well, or did you think its story was too boring and confusing to follow along with? Let me know in the comments below. Anyways guys, that's going to wrap up my review of Doom of Love. Thanks for watching this video, I hope you enjoyed it, and as always stay tuned for the next part, where next time I review the American romance, Love and Gelato. Bye bye!